Hello and welcome to the next part of the XCAM tutorial video, and today I will show you the last two functions within the prefab window, and then we go on with a new dialog element, and there you can find the position list and the object info page. So here we go. Okay, we start with the last two functions within the prefab window, and these two functions are randomize functions. And please use these functions only in connection with vegetation and stones. And note, these functions will only take effect if you import your project into a terrain builder project. So if you create a script file or maybe a mission file from your project, then you can't see any changes. Both functions require an object selection, and the first function is a random scaling function. But first I have to create some objects and to load my empty project, and I will use the multibrush. Press O. Press return. Now I will copy all these objects here. Press G, press C, press C again, and again. Okay, now we have to show the prefab window, and now we create an object selection. Press G, and then you press again this button here to show all the filters and the functions, and here you can find this list entry, set random scaling. And if you now double left click this entry, then you get this little dialog, and here you can now enter a scaling range. So for example, if you want to scale these objects from 0.8 maybe up to 1.3. Press OK, and now this random scaling value is saved for each object. And that means if you now set the focus to any of these objects, then you can see an additional white bounding box. And this white bounding box shows you which randomized scaling factor is saved for each object. So it's only a visualization, but you know, it's sometimes helpful to see what's going on. And as you can see, it's for each object a little bit different because it's randomized. So we can press the spacebar. Okay, now we can try the same function with a new object selection. Maybe these objects here. Double left click this list entry, and then maybe we can try a scaling range between 1.5 and 2. Press OK. And now, as you can see, we have a much larger white bounding box for each object, because the scaling range is now much higher. Okay, press space. Now I think we can try the second function, the random pitch bank function. But first I think we create another copy from these objects here. Create the selection, and then double left click on this list entry here to get this dialog. And here you can enter a random pitch value, maybe 5 degrees, and a random bank value. Press OK. And you know, at the moment there is no visualization for this function available, but it's already saved for each object here. And I think for this reason we can try to import these objects into the terrain builder, But first I will show you how you can reset all these randomized values. So press G and now maybe I set a random scaling. Now as you can see there is a random scaling value saved for each object, and to reset these values press the key 0 on the numpad. And then you have only to confirm this dialog and you know all the random values are resetted. So there is no random scaling anymore, and also no random pitch bank. Okay. If you are working with a random pitch bank function, then it's always a good idea to use this function only for some objects and not for all the objects within an object selection, for example. Otherwise, you know, it looks not really realistic. So maybe you can use a manual selection, so pick some objects here. Maybe these objects, and then press return. Double left click the random pitch bank function. Enter the values. Hit OK and you are ready. Okay, and now another short example to use in these functions. So first I will start with a multipass session, and I have already created a dynamic object pool with two different object types. So press O, set the right minimum distance, and I think 8 meters is okay. Now we create some objects here. Okay, press return to save this session. And now first I select all the objects by pressing G, open the prefab window, then double left click the random scaling function, and now we set a range between 1.3 up to 1.6. Okay. Oh, that's okay. Press space. Now I start a brush selection by pressing T, and now I try to pre-select only the objects on the outside. Oh, that's okay. Press return. Oh, fine. Press E to set the objects back. And now I set a different random scaling value for these objects. And I think I will use a range between 0.7 and 1 original size. That's okay. And now I save my project, and then we have a look into the terrain builder. Okay, here we are, and we can see the first object group without any randomized scaling values and also without any randomized pitch bank values, though all the objects have the same size. And here we go on with the second object group, and you can see the different object size because we have saved a randomized scaling value for each object. And I mean it was 0.8 up to 1.3, but I don't remember. And here comes the next object group, and as you can see these objects are much larger because the scaling value was between 1.5 and 2 or 1.3 and 2, I don't know. but you can see the different. And here we have the object group with the different randomized pitch bank values. It's also okay. Then this group with only a few objects with a random pitch bank value, but also with a randomized scaling value. Okay, and now the objects here with the different scaling value on the outside. It's only a simple example to show you the idea behind that function. Now I will show you the next additional dialog element, and that's a position and object info window. And to show this window, press simply this button here at the top of the screen, pause. And by default, this window shows you the object info page. But if you press this button here, then you can switch to the position list or switch back to the object info page. So this button is a switch. And if you have selected the position list, then you can save any camera position you want. And that's sometimes really helpful. And for example, if you want to save this camera position now, then simply press this button, create a new camera position. And then you can see a new list entry here, and that's the current used camera position. So now we can move to any other position. Oh, first I have to load my project. Okay, so move to any position you want. Press this button again. Maybe this position. And now you can simply switch between these positions by selecting the respective list entry. So this position, and this position. And if you select the first list entry, the empty one, then you go back to the last working position. You can also use this function to take some screenshots. So first you have to save them nice positions. Maybe this one. This one. And this one. Then you can press the key V to hide all the UI elements. Take a screenshot. Press V again. Switch to the next position. Press V, take a screenshot. And that's also very easy. Another example is maybe if you are working here at this position currently and maybe you want to quick move now to any other position to have a look how the work is going on with other teammates. Then stop your work, save this position, and then maybe open the map to quick move to any position. So maybe here. Move around a little bit. Start the XCam again. And then, select this position and you can go on with your work. It's also possible, of course, to change any already saved position. So simply select the position you want to change, maybe in this here. Then press this button to save the change. And then you get the message position change saved. To delete any position from the list, simply select the position, maybe this one here, and press this button. Delete the selected camera position. Hit OK, and then the position is not available anymore. If you want to delete all positions with one step, then simply select the empty list entry, the first one, and then press this button here. And if you hit OK, then all the positions are deleted. At this point, a small hint: the position list is not connected to any project, but to the map you are currently working on. So that means if you work with XCAM on another map, then maybe this position list is empty. And if you have any object selected, then it's not possible to save a new position. So first you have to deselect the object or the whole object selection to save a new position. If you open the map by pressing the M key, then you can see 3 different markers for each player. That means the blue marker shows a player position, the yellow marker shows a camera position, and the black marker shows a camera target. And if there is only a player marker, then you know that this player is not using the XCAM at the moment and maybe only walking around. And if I now move my camera, you can see what happens on the map. So, and this happens for each player. So you always see where all the other players are working. And then it's easy to quick move to this position to see what's going on there. You can also lock the map to the target position. So lock, and then the map is automatically moving with the camera position. Okay, now some words about the object info page. And if you have any object selected, and I mean an already saved object, and you switch to the object info page, then you can find some interesting data about the object. The object type, the name of the project where the object is saved, the object group ID, the position data, X, Y, and Z, the orientation of the object, the ASL height, the random scaling value, the random pitch value, random bank value, and also the slope function. Then you can find here the size of the bounding box on X, Y, and Z, and also the user-defined copy distance or the rotation axis. And the last one is the placement method, and this value is a config value. And if you deselect the object, then the object info page is empty, of course. If you have no object selected and you set the focus to any object, then the object info page shows you all the data from this object. If there is for an object some non-default data saved or maybe some user-defined data, then this data is marked blue within the object info page. So, for example, for this object here, there is some user-defined data saved. Double left click, and that's the data for the copy distance on X and the rotation axis. And if you now, for example, turn the ASL mode on, then this value is also marked blue, because ASL on is not a default value. turn off. And you know, that's only a visualization of the user-defined data or the non-default data. And if you have any object selection active, then the object info page shows you the data of the current selected reference object. So if you switch to another reference object, then you can see the data from this object, of course. If you work with a random pitch bank function, then remember there is no visualization available to show you the randomized pitch bank values for each object. But if you have the object info page active, then you simply set the focus to any object, and then you can see there is some user-defined data saved, the blue marked values. And if you set the focus to any map object, then you can see that some data is marked red. Maybe it's better to see if I change to another color set. This one. So here you can see some data is marked red. There is also a possibility to unlock the data within the object info page, and that means you are able to change some values manually. So, for example, if you want to change the height of this object here, then first select this object, and normally you are not able to reach any value within this object info page. So if you try to select any data, it's normally not possible. But if you press this button here, then you can unlock all the data. So press this button and now select the value you want to change. In this example, the set position. Then double left click, enter a new value, and I think 0 is the right value. Press OK, and then you can see that the object changed the height. And now you have to press this button again to save the data, and now the object data is also refreshed again. And please note at this point, it's not possible to change any data within this object info page. So for example, the bounding box data is only an output data, so you cannot change these values. And now a small example what you can do with this special function. So maybe you want to copy this object here, this one, along the sidewalk, and the copy distance should be 12 meters. And that's a little bit tricky normally. And what we can do now is the following. So first select this object, set the right orientation, and maybe the right start position. Then we have a closer look at the bounding box of this object, and we want to copy this object along the y-axis. And at this point remember the triangle here to know which side is the north side of the object. We know the bounding box size on y is 0.3. That means the object size on y is 0.6 meters, because the bounding box is always the half of the object size. And that means we now know exactly the factor to reach 12 meters. The factor is 20. So then it's simple. Press this button to unlock the data. Select the copy distance on y. Double left click and enter the factor 20. Hit OK and press U again to save the data. And now it's important to know that as soon as you unlock the data, the X-Cam switch to the alternate moving mode. That means the camera is not attached anymore. And that means if you copy this object, then you can't copy along the bounding box, but exactly on the same position, you know. But we don't want this. So we have to press space first and then double left click the object again to select the object in normal mode. And now simply copy the object. And now we copy with a copy distance of 12 meters. And we can check the distance. So first I move the crosshair exactly into the center of the object. Move the camera a little bit back. And then move the mouse cursor to one of these objects. And if we now have a closer look to the status bar on the right side, then we can see in the distance 12.2 meters or maybe 12. And that's okay. It works.